I'm really looking forward to today's presentation. Judy, I see you've joined us. Welcome. Deb and Mandy, welcome as well. Trenton. So people are starting to log in. I think we're all recovering a little bit from Zoom fatigue. We had so much of it early on. It's kind of leveled out, but okay.
Okay, Lori, I have us on record and I just started the live stream to YouTube.
Okay, super. We did start streaming to YouTube about 3 or 4 months ago now, so feel free to hop over there too if you'd like and participate that way. Just another service that we make available to everybody. As we're getting people to log on, let's just share some upcoming slide items. Sherry, if you would. Okay, thank you. So tomorrow is the next deadline for the Nebraska Investment Finance Authority's housing study grant application. I do believe there's another deadline coming up later this year. So, but if you have one of those underway, just keep in mind that tomorrow is your deadline for getting that one submitted. So check out their website. And in addition, NIFA is also doing some webinar series of their own for the summer. We've got 2 listed there that are coming up. They had an excellent one this morning, and you can check those out. Since they didn't get to have their in-person conference earlier this year, this is one way that they are utilizing to connect us with NIFA and different topics that were scheduled to be presented at the conference in March. And then July 29th is DED's deadline for pre-applications for the Community Development Owner-Occupied Rehab Program. If you are a municipal government, you are eligible for those funds. A pre-application is due, and the formal application process is deadline is a little bit later this year. So feel free to visit their website for the 2020 application guidelines for that program. So at the website there. And if you have something that you know of either in your community or your region that's coming up soon, conference or just something that this learning network of individuals might want to know about, feel free to drop Sharon or myself a note, and we'll feature that in next month's webinar as well. So we are grateful for our partnerships with both NIFA and the Department of Economic Development, and we appreciate their support and the work that they do across the state to promote and further housing. So I think we'll go ahead and just honor everybody's time and get started today. So let me just formally introduce myself and welcome all of you to the HomeNE Learning Network. My name is Lori Ferguson, and I'm with South Central Economic Development District in Holdridge, and I am your host for today's conversation. As Sherry mentioned just a little bit ago, we are streaming again on YouTube. And so if you have questions, please check with Sherry via the chat box. We are always excited to update you on how HomeNE is growing and continues to grow. And last month I shared this, but being a farmer's daughter, I just really like this graphic. So I wanted to use it again this month to just remind you that we are growing as a learning network. If you've ever heard Sharon and myself talk about HomeNE, we often liken the process that we go through to that of tilling the soil, planting seeds, and eventually enabling our local communities to experience a harvest as they successfully address their own housing challenges and needs, hopefully through participation in HomeNE and the connections that they make through this program. So I hope you're seeing some growth and some excitement about housing as you participate. So go ahead, Sherry. Okay, we also shared this last month. We're just really excited to show you what's been happening. In March of 2018, we had our second webinar, and those communities had been represented to date, followed by today. We have a new community joining us, an individual joining us from Bancroft, Nebraska is here. And so we've added that star, and hopefully we got it in about the right location in the state. We've been joined by 128 different communities that are represented in HomeNE to date, as well as, I believe at this point, individuals from 8 different states around the region. So we are blessed and thankful for all of you who join us. So whether this is your first time joining us, is the case with Bancroft, or if you're a regular attender to HomeNE gatherings and webinars, we just thank you. You are our support network, and we just welcome you here today. So today we have the pleasure of hearing from Dr. Dan Hazing and Jim Kosick from the Schuyler Community Schools. Both of these gentlemen participated in our in-person gathering in Schuyler 13 months ago. And the information that they shared that day and the stories that they told us, we just felt were incredible. And so we knew we had to have them back at some point, and they graciously agreed to join us today. And so I'm looking forward to hearing from them. So before I turn this over to Sharon to introduce our guest today and tell you a little bit more about HomeNE, I just want to mention the chat box at the bottom of your screen. We just really encourage you to utilize that to communicate with us, questions you might have, to communicate with each other. If you see something that somebody posts in there and you want to know more about their program, by all means, go ahead and just connect with them. Make it a means of communication with all of us. We'll be monitoring as you respond and as you enter items, and we'll share comments and questions with our presenters today for you. We've put on the screen a couple questions about today. We'd like to know, and feel free to use your chat box to answer these questions. And if you missed the slide, we'll be putting these in the chat box momentarily. But we want to know from you what interests you about today's topic. Why did you join HomeNE today? What is it that you want to know? Also, what do you hope to know more about at the end of today's webinar? This is a great way to kind of give us an idea of what you're wanting to know from our presenters. And feel free to ask additional questions throughout the presentation through the chat box. But we just want to know why you tuned in and are joining us today. You could have probably been doing a lot of things, but you've chosen to join us today. So HomeNE is a learning network, and we learn best when we interact and engage with each other. So we welcome and ask you to share your thoughts. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sharon. She is the Executive Director here at South Central Economic Development District. And welcome to Sharon.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to the July edition. I think it was hotter last month. I'm kind of enjoying a couple cooler days, but I did just spend 2 hours at a youth track meet, and it didn't really feel cool. But we're excited to have you here to our HomeNE 2020 webinar series on a beautiful July day. South Central Economic Development District acts as the lead agent for these monthly webinars and our gatherings. And typically I say semi-annual gatherings, but I guess it'll be annual this year. We have not made definite plans for a next one yet. Actually, we made plans, we changed them, we made them again, we changed them. So we haven't made the third set of plans yet. What is HomeNE? It's a learning network established in 2017 with people like you in mind. We want to build a network of individuals and communities with a shared interest in assessing and addressing housing issues in rural communities. We want to provide a safe space to be vulnerable about what's been tried and to find the motivation to take one more step in the right direction. We want to learn from the successes and struggles of others. We want to take away new ideas or see things through a new lens, and we want to inspire you. What you're doing is valuable in each of your communities. Nobody can or will do it quite like you, and now is the time to leave your mark. So today we'll hear from Dr. Dan Hazing and Jim Kosick of Schuyler Community School District. And as Lori shared, these gentlemen gave of their time during our gathering in Schuyler, which was just a tremendous time. We were inspired by the programs in their community, and we believe their successes will be of value to each of you. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit of their story. With that, gentlemen, welcome to our Learning Network today.
Good afternoon. I'm Dan Hazing, and it's my 7th year. I just completed my 7th year here in Schuyler, and I'm thrilled to be able to join with you again. Along with me today is Jim Kosick, and this program started before I got here, and so I'd like to turn it over to Jim, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Uh-oh, the host disabled my screen again. Please enable me.
I'll go ahead and introduce myself while we're getting the slideshow up. First of all, thanks for allowing us to share some of the things that we do here in Schuyler that work for us. As Dr. Hazing said, I'm Jim Kosick, formerly a construction teacher. This is my 32nd year here in Schuyler, and I've been here my whole life. Actually graduated from here in 1984, so I really haven't moved too far away, but spent about 27 years in education on the teaching side, and now am on the administrative side. So we're going to try to share some of the things that got our program to where it is today, and how we started it, and some of the challenges we have had and have overcome, and maybe that can help some other communities find a way for them to improve their housing as well. So
Just a second, I think it's just
I
started.
think we're getting there.
Okay, so it's on yours. So
Okay. As I said, I started on the teaching side. This is kind of my background. I'm an old Kearney State guy, and went into construction, and that kind of took us to where we were building just typical sheds and decks and things like that. And Schuyler at that time, and like many communities, was struggling with some housing. So we really looked at how we could improve that. And we started with wanting
yours isn't shifting. What's going
to
on?
provide a, are you guys seeing that next slide, or are you still on the first slide?
We are
Let's see.
still, oh, there's the
There it is.
second slide.
There it is. We got it.
Getting caught up to the lag time here. So one of the first things we wanted to do is to provide better learning activities for our students, give them some skills, and offer them maybe a career pathway. Construction for the last number of years has been a huge area and continues to be a huge area. So we wanted to offer that as an experience. And in doing those things, we also wanted to improve our housing in our community. So we really kind of looked at answering those questions and how that would get us to accomplish those things. And as I started that, and this was prior to 2000, went to our school board initially and pitched a 2-car garage with a studio apartment above the garage, and thought that would be a good place to start. They initially shot that idea down, and went back the next year and retooled things a little bit. And we began with our first house. It was a 28 by 40. We put in a foundation at our school, and we built our first house on site. And then we auctioned that house, similar to what some other schools do. And we built 5 houses that way for the first 5 years. And they were nice houses, but one of the problems we ran into is they really didn't stay in Schuyler. Our first house went to rural Schuyler, and I have to give a little plug to a gentleman, Chuck Michek, who purchased our first house. He came to the auction with no intentions of buying a house, and went home that afternoon and told his wife that he just bought a brand new house and they were going to move it to his farm. So without him kind of going out on a limb there and starting us, I don't know if our program would be where it is today. But the first 5 houses, as you see, really didn't help our housing situation. So then we continued to evolve, and we started with our first house in 2000 that was built on site. And that's kind of where we started. And initially, that was funded by the homeowner, and we built it really wasn't a spec home. We built it to his specifications. It, to this date, is our largest house, about 1,700 square feet, full basement, full finished basement. That's kind of how we started. We, at that time, didn't know if we could sustain that. So we started looking at other ways because we really didn't see a lot of houses being built in Schuyler. So we began to look for partners, and NeighborWorks Northeast was a great partner in us starting that. Initially, our lots were acquired from abandoned homes that really needed to be taken down. We did a controlled burn where we brought in the fire department, and they did a little training on those homes. And then they would basically acquire the lot. We would build the house for them, for NeighborWorks, and they would sell the house. And in return for doing that, they would provide the school with a $3,000 stipend that was used to purchase tools and equipment that we needed. And then they also offered two $250 scholarships for students that wanted to pursue construction. So that was a great start for us. And without them, we probably wouldn't have been able to be where we're at as well. Then we kind of lost some funding in that area, or they went a different route. So we partnered with our local construction lumberyard and kind of modified what we were doing, and we were able just to continue the process. And some of those homes were purchased during the building process through our lumberyard. Others were not, were built, and then they were sold once they were completed. So that's kind of the evolution of the program, and we're still doing that today. And I think we're on our 20th house, I think this year, maybe our 21st. I'd have to go back and count. But with that, our students really didn't do all the work. So I kind of have a list here of some of the things that our students did, as well as some of the subcontractor work that we needed. Things like plumbing and electrical and sheetrock. Those are really things that are difficult to do if you've never done them before. And we still, in the end, have to have a final product that the public is willing to have confidence in and purchase. So you can kind of see the difference of things that were subbed out and things that our students did. I will say our subcontractors over the years, a number of the individuals who did subcontractor work are former Schuyler graduates that have gone into construction. So whenever we did that, it was always nice for them to give a little presentation to our students that, yeah, you can go out and get a career in this area and make a good living and pursue that. So trying to keep that connection as well. I've just provided a list here. This was actually a PowerPoint that was started for teachers who are considering this program, and this may not be real of interest to you, but there's kind of a list there of some of the tools and things that we needed to acquire, at least initially, to get started. And with the stipend each year, we're able to upgrade some of those things, but that list of tools and equipment is kind of where we started and what you need to get started. Students, they had to come in with some of their own personal tools. They purchased those, and while they have to have those, that also runs through our student fee portion of our school policy. But I will say this, at the end of the year, I always ask students, if you're not going to pursue construction and want to donate anything to the school, and I always had enough leftover tools to pretty much provide the next year's students if they couldn't come up with something. We were able to get that for them. Our class, we initially, had some requirements. It's for seniors only. And this is a capstone class through our CTE program. So students had to initially take a technology exploration class, then an intro to construction class. They could take CAD class. That wasn't really recommended, or it wasn't required, I should say. It was recommended. And then they would take this construction class as a senior. And I always, my counselors always had trouble with this, but we didn't have to do it a lot. But I always told students that this is not only a class, but it's more like a job. And I always reserved the right to fire a student if they were being unsafe, was usually the biggest issue. And I had to do that only in a couple instances. But you don't have to do it very often for kids to understand that you're being serious about it. It is a dual credit class with CCC. And then they also received a 10-hour OSHA certification as well. That's a $25 class that we provide payment for, and then they have that certification for life. Logistics and materials, it was a student's responsibility to get to the job site. We always did a permission slip form so parents knew what they were doing. I did have one student that rode his bike every day, and we don't have a large community. Obviously, it took him a little more time to get there, but you know, he did the best job he could, and that's just the way we handled it. And students understood that that's kind of a privilege to do that, and they don't abuse it because there's a lot riding on how well they handle themselves. Appropriate clothing is always kind of interesting. Kids like to wear shorts every day, and when it's 0 outside, we're working outside. And there's times I've had to provide kids with some things, but for the most part, we made it work. And that's a big part of construction too. You have to be able to work outside and do those things. Kind of a grading rubric that I used kind of evolved to their daily grade. They receive 5 points a day, and 80% of their grade came from their on-site work. And then basically arriving on time was worth a point. If they worked safely, what kind of teamwork skills they had, if they used appropriate communication and language, and then the daily progress. They had to get something done in that time period. These are all employability skills, but when I talk to people out in the workplace, those are the things that people get fired for the most. So we really hit that hard. Monday through Thursday, we're typically working on site. We have a double block class, which at one time we were on block schedule, which worked great for this. But since we've gone to a 7 and now next year an 8-period day, there are 2 block periods back to back. So the time frame is about the same. And then on a typical week, Friday, we would be back in class reviewing what we did this week and then planning what we need for the next week. And the weather does change that schedule a little bit. If it's going to be raining on Thursday, we might meet in class on that day. But typically, I don't have to go through each of these, but typically we're meeting for a few minutes at the beginning of class and going over what we're going to do, any quick demos, and then cutting loose and getting kids to work and kind of observing those things and working around the class to make sure if they had any questions that they're getting them answered and we're getting some things done. Have to get them back to school on time too. That was a big priority. You can't have an announcement all the time that kids are late. Big part of starting, I think, is sharing those expectations. This is a privilege. Really, our school initially was investing about $130,000 in those students' hands with materials, so they had to do a good job, and the house has to sell when it's done. Basically getting started, we started with a foundation. Our foundation and dirt work is already done for next year's class, and they'll be starting that work here in early August. So kind of what we found works the best for us. Class size is really important. 8 is about the ideal number. You can probably get more done with 6 or 8 kids than you can with 12 kids. That's been my experience. and it's really worked pretty good. 2-hour class is about the right period of time. You have to be really organized, make sure you have your materials and get set up. It takes us about 3,000 man hours to build a house. So those are kind of the things that we gauge every year. And PR, I think, is really important for this program as well. Students will take photos. One of the things that I always did with them as well is make sure that they put a PowerPoint together. And many seniors showed that PowerPoint at their graduation parties. They're pretty proud of that house after working on it for a year. When I was teaching the class, I tried to tweet things out on a weekly basis. And then we always did an open house at the end of the year and invited school board, administration, mayor, just let parents. And I made the kids give the tours. And it's really interesting. They're always quick to want to point out some of the mistakes they made and things we had to correct and fix. But they enjoyed doing that, those tours as well, and showing off the product. One of the things I started doing towards the end is a home builder binder, where I would put all of the information and weekly plans and floor plans and warranties, all of those into a binder. And then I would give those to whoever purchased the home. So they had all that information together. And I think that was helpful as well. You know, I'm trying to wrap this up a little bit, but just as you're looking at this, I've got some points on here to consider. You know, if you can create those partnerships with your community, I think there is a huge win-win in a project like this. It helps your pride of your students, builds your construction labor force, but also provides you with a house that, and I tell our kids this, you're going to get to drive by that house for the rest of your life and tell your grandkids someday that you built that house. So I think there's a lot to be taken from that, and that's just kind of how we did that. It's a big selling point for our class. And Mr. Wemhoff, who teaches the class now, he's reached out and done some women in construction careers, and we have had females take the class, and they're in many cases better students than a lot of the males who take the class. So that's kind of what we've done. And we've got some pictures here, go through what some of those houses look like over the last few years. So this is the first house we built on site. I don't have pictures of the first 5 houses because they went out of the community, but we'll scroll through these fairly quickly. And you can see they're not all the same. They're different. And this was our smallest house we built. I think it was right around 1,000 square feet. These are current pictures or relatively recent pictures, I should say. So one of our principals lives in this house. Just a variety of different floor plans and what I would call really nice starter homes for a lot of families. So it's been a great program. I've enjoyed starting the program and even enjoyed more seeing the housing in Schuyler continue to improve and progress in a lot of different ways. So I will say, not that he's my boss, but I would say a big part of that has been Dr. Hazing moving to the community and really challenging some folks to think about housing in a little bit different way and extend ourselves to a point where we've really gone from 0 to 1 house additionally a year to a number of homes that are being built in the community now. So that's been a big plus. And I think I've used up a lot of my time. So
Tim?
you want to jump in, Dr. Anything else?
Tim?
Yeah.
As we transition to Dr. Hazing, we had a question, and you touched on the smallest house, but if I can just throw this question in quickly, roughly what's the square footage and what are these houses selling for?
Our smallest house was right at 1,000 square feet. It had a full basement, but it was an unfinished basement. Our largest house was 1,700 square feet. It was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath on the main floor, in a fully finished basement with 2 bedrooms, 2 baths in the basement. Last year's house that we just built was a 4. Dr. Hazing, I'll let you comment on that because
Okay, the house that I have on the screen right now is a 2018-19 house. And in order to be able to move forward with the contract for the next year, this house didn't sell. It was too big. It has 6 bedrooms, 3-car garage, 1,700 square feet, main floor, and a fully finished basement now. I bought it and I finished the basement, and I was planning on living in it for a couple of years, but it just sold. And so I had to move out again. And so the next house is the one that I was thinking that I was going to move to. But this house sold. So I went back to the biggest helper that I found in the community for housing outside of Jim was Cliff Mesner. And so I'm going to transition into those. So the houses sell for somewhere now around $200,000.
Okay.
So as a school system, we knew that having places for our people to live was important. And so if you can have a teacher live in your community, put their kids in your school, it says a lot for the quality of your school. So the district had been paying $1,000 bonus, and but Cliff Mesner got involved with us and helped us put together a homeowners group that looked at building some houses. But in this process, we applied for and got some grant money through NIFA to put in workforce housing. And so the school district, we had to give guaranteed rents. We built eight homes, and in the guaranteed rents, then if we had a staff member that would rent a home, we'd give them $1,000 a year for 5 years, in addition to the $1,000 for living in the district. And if they were to buy one of those workforce houses, we'd give them, depends on how they bought it, because you could have a rent to own, and we'd give you $2,000 a year for up to 5 years for a total $10 or $10,000 lump sum payment, if you just purchase the home. Working with Cliff Mesner, I learned a lot about building a house a year isn't going to keep up with the demand, and so through that homeowners builders association, we constructed 2 homes in the first year, one through Cliff and one through the home builders group, and then we went to the WIP housing, or workforce housing, with the rent guarantees. And Cliff was involved again, and they built duplexes and worked with NeighborWorks and Habitat. They built 2 more houses. And then just a little over a year ago, they received LB 518 funds and built the Eastview apartment complex and 2 additional duplexes for sale. Luckily, one of them didn't sell, so I'm going to rent that for a few months until my next year's schoolhouse is done. So with that, I think the school system can't do it on its own, and we found that the community couldn't do it on its own, but the partnership with the expertise from what Mesner has brought to us were just the ability to be able to dream bigger than we could as a school system, to have access to some funding, to work with us on really identifying the variety of needs that we had in our community for housing. And so it took a lot of partners. We have 3 more lots that we can build on through the lumberyard, and hopefully by that time that our home builders group will have enough money to be able to start building without having to go borrow money to build a house. And so we got 3 years to put that money together so that it's a sustainable program from that point on. I think one of the other shifts that I think Jim made early in this was when we were building small houses, because we're a high minority school, we knew that everything that we did reflected our image. And when we built the nicest houses in town, it changed the image of what our kids could do. And it wasn't just a kid built house, but it was a quality home. And so with that, we'll open it to questions unless you have.
I do see a question here from Trent that I'd like to comment on. Question is, did you consider renovating an existing home rather than building a new home? And the answer to that is yes, we did. However, finding a home that lends itself well to renovation with a high school group that's never done construction before, I think is a bigger challenge. We also have a number of people who are looking for those homes because they want to renovate them and they want to rent them out. So the market is pretty high for that type of home. And that creates a lot of challenges as well. So when we considered those two things, we really felt for our community, building a new home was a better route to go. However, I think for smaller communities, that might be a great place to start. And then you maybe transition into building a new house down the road. But anytime you can improve a home or a lot or an area with a new home or a better home, I think that just helps your housing overall. But it doesn't, by renovating an existing home, you don't necessarily increase your housing.
One of the other answers to that is this: schools by law are a non-compete. So we can't just go out and start building homes by ourselves. We have to have a partner, and that partner actually owns the house. We'll work, but we can't take our local contractors out of business because we choose to build a home. And so because schools are in the non-compete status, for us, we're protecting not only our local builders, but we're also making sure that we don't violate that non-compete clause with those people who are making a living doing this. We're pushing careers and we're pushing homes, but we're not trying to take jobs from anybody.
Okay, thank you. Yes, there are a fair number of questions. If I can jump in and throw those your way, Dr. Hazing and Jim. A question of clarification that I want to pose. If you could elaborate, the question was asked, NIFA grants can be used to support teacher housing, ? Maybe you want to elaborate that the program, what program was used to build some of those houses?
I know that NIFA was on the workforce housing. With the schoolhouses, we didn't use any grant money. If we looked at the cost of a house, the cost of the house is somewhere around, to build a $200,000 home, that we have between $50,000 and $60,000 of labor in that. And so the builder or the investor, that whoever's putting the money up, they're going to get about $60,000 worth of labor free for that home. And so there is some profit in there. And so as we would start building homes, that's where the home builders group would be able to build their bank account. But the school homes were never built with any grants or any other funding. They were solely put up by the building company.
The first, I would clarify that before Dr. Hazing was here, the first 5 homes that we built, the first home was run through our school. And then when it was sold, that money was put back in that building fund account. And then we did that first 5 years until we partnered.
Okay. So the Workforce Housing Initiative was the earliest program that was funded by NIFA, and then followed up by Rural Workforce Housing Funds later on. And those were both NIFA projects that were successful in Schuyler. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And
So,
now the money they're in a revolving loan fund as those homes sell and rent. So hopefully we have some perpetual money that will allow us to keep building.
okay. So one question that was added to the chat box is, what type of housing do you see starting teachers looking for, and what rent is affordable in a starting teacher's income range?
One of the issues with housing in town was our appraisals were coming in too low. And when Cliff came to town, that was one of the challenges that he gave us, was that your appraisals are too low in this community. And so over the last 4 years, we've worked hard. And I know that we recently sold one of the homes for $275,000, and that's been the highest selling home. It's a school built home. And so trying to raise the appraisals, trying to make sure that the $225,000 homes had comparable sales. And so I think that's important for us as we look forward, that we don't sell cheaper homes because we're hurting the housing market by keeping appraisals down. We need to make sure that we keep pushing that upper end. We have a lot of older homes in town that sell, and the day that they come up for sale, they're gone. We had a teacher who just resigned and moved into, or will be moving into another district. He didn't even resign for a day, and his house sold. And so those are between 130 and 150,000. But we challenged them, if you don't build $200,000 homes, and because we are a high minority community, we could build $150,000 homes and sell them every day. But we wanted to make sure that we had a second home, and so it might not be for a starter teacher, but that we would have homes available, but that people may use these homes to move up into. The same thing when Cliff started working with us with duplexes and so on, that people would get out of their 5 and 6 bedroom homes and buy the duplexes or rent the duplexes and be able to move some more affordable housing. But our rents are between probably $600 and $1,200 a month in Schuyler.
Okay, thank you. Another question asking how the initiatives are working out. It seems to be doing well, but can you touch on the rural workforce housing availability? And are you seeing, stronger, more stable families as a result of the school's program and the housing initiatives that are taking place in Schuyler?
At the start, we get questioned about, is it really the school's position to address the housing issue in the community? No, but it is the school's. It's the school's responsibility to make sure that we expose our kids to the workforce that is needed, whether it's in electric, whether it's in plumbing, whether it's in housing, whether it's really in any of those areas. And so our ability to be able to benefit the community while at the same time having our kids involved in a program that may encourage them to continue in the trades. So of the workforce housing, I think of the 8 homes that are there, I still have 1 teacher renting one of them, and one of them is another renter. So we've never had to pay any guaranteed rents. And I think the other 6 are sold. So, and they sold from somewhere between, I think the first one sold for around 200, and I think the last one sold for either 215 or 220.
Okay, good. Sue had a question for you. As a follow-up to the school's success, what issues will COVID present this year to your program?
I think that because our class size is small, it's 8, and we'll have kids working. We're still working through our return to school plans about what everything looks like, from busing to lunch to construction to physical education to really everything that we do. I don't think that the construction will be behind. The one thing that we did find, we're in a big construction project at school, is that it sometimes affects the suppliers. And so being able to get things, well, I bought next year's house already. And so I'm kind of hoping that it gets done by next year, because Cliff may kick me on the street instead of let me live in that duplex for a while. Okay. But as far as students, I think our kids will be pretty dedicated. They want to get out, they want to work, and we want to try to get back to the safe environments. So keeping kids in groups and keeping them apart from each other, that's going to be a lot easier out there on the site than it would be necessarily sitting in a classroom next to each other.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I don't see from the teaching perspective a huge issue with COVID and construction. From that perspective, we may need to purchase a little bit more PPE, but for the most part, our kids have their own tools. They have they're wearing their own safety glasses, and they'll have their own hard hat, you know, and there might be a little bit of additional sanitation that has to happen, but like Dr. Hazing said, probably be easier in that setting than a PE setting or another class like that.
Okay, thank you. What other questions do you have for our presenters today? Or comments on something that you maybe heard them talk about? One comment I wanted to make, when we do a gathering, we take a tour of our host community, and we don't just focus on housing, though that's an important part of the tour, but the school was included in our housing tour. And I see a question, so I will finish my thought here later, but Richard wants to know, how do you handle the insurance and liability for the students?
The school has insurance on it, and so does the builder, or so does the owner of the property. And so we've not had too many worksite accidents. However, a year ago in the spring, kids were getting ready to clean up after the class, and one of the students took the nail gun and put it in his arm and started carrying it. It was still hooked up, and it went off and shot a nail through his forearm.
Oh,
But missed the bones, but yeah, we do have regular insurance on our kids. You know, it'd be a liability insurance policy, but we do not have medical insurance for them. So
The worst accident we had was me falling off scaffolding about 17 years ago and breaking my heel. But
that's why he's a principal.
yeah.
why you graduated, correct? So, and Sue wants to know, maybe from our presenters today, or maybe someone on the webinar today, is anyone aware whether other communities are doing a program similar to the one in Schuyler? Great.
Well, I know there are other schools that are building houses. Aquinas in David City has done theirs for years. Grand Island Northwest is doing one. I believe Fairbury at one time was. Those are some of the ones that I know about that are relatively close. And everyone's a little bit different. You kind of tailor that to what works in your community. I think the biggest hurdle probably to starting this is finding a teacher who has the ability or is naive enough to think that they can take a group of high school kids and build a house and then sell it at market value. But it can be done, and finding that teacher, I think, is key to that, getting that off the ground.
Okay, great. Sherry mentions she thinks Lexington has a program as well. So, okay. So what do you as a group today want to know more about the presentation that Dr. Hazing and Jim have given today? Or maybe a better question for you is, what are you taking away from today's conversation? I just encourage you to open your microphones. As you're thinking about that, another question pops in. Let me get this here. Do you have trouble coordinating non-student work with your construction class?
I guess I need more direction on what you mean by non-student work.
Robert asked that question. I'll just give a stab at that. I'm assuming maybe the work that has to be done by other professions that are not necessarily done by students. So we'll let him.
Yeah, the thing thing that they need to realize, my subcontractors, our construction project cannot run long. We have a definite deadline, and that's when kids leave school. And I need to make sure that we meet that deadline, because I can't call in a plumber and he can't tell me I'll be there in 2 weeks when I need him next week. So they understand that sometimes they have to juggle a little bit, but they have to stay on our schedule. And they know that up front. And if they can't do that, then in many cases, I have to find a different subcontractor for the following year, because that's pretty important, getting the house done by May 1st or whenever your students are leaving.
Okay. Another question for you. What has this program done for the contractor or for contractors in your community? Do you have kids that have gone through the program that have gone on to become builders?
We have, the majority of our students go on to CCC, and a lot of them end up in the trades, whether it's in welding, construction, electricity, plumbing. And one of the things that we're noticing is that the kids who are working on these homes are starting to look for and get jobs with local builders. And so it's just like anything, you know, every student in your school, you try to find what their interest is and how you try to prepare them the best. This is the first school that I've been to that actually expanded all those opportunities for kids and gives them more real opportunities to go into those trade areas. For some of our kids, they're bright kids, but some of them don't have enough money to go on to a 4-year school. And so they will go to a trade school, or they'll go get a trade, and they'll be in the workforce as a skilled worker faster. So, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, and we've got kids from, just from welders all the way up to architects and engineers and everything in between, plumbers, electricians. And I mean, I don't think there's a construction related field that I couldn't name at least a few graduates, Schuyler graduates, that have pursued those areas. And I really believe a lot of that had to do with just exposing them to something that they kind of grabbed a hold of and found out they could be good at, and now are supporting their family and doing really well.
The other kind of cool takeaway is that when kids leave your school, they're proud of their high school. We give our kids the ability to be able to be proud of more than that. This is the house I helped build. This is how I help contribute to my community. And there's a lot of pride in our kids in what they do, because that house is a symbol of who they are. So everything that we do, we try to make sure that we do with a lot of pride, and
I noticed
I think it's really helped us.
I noticed on one of your slides, you designated some of the services that are provided that were provided by Schuyler graduates. Were some of those kids that went through the program, or they just wanted to support the school project? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think a number of those, we've got a plumber, an electrician, and just using them as examples, they went through the program. They now have their own business. They're Schuyler grads. They're in the area. I think that's a great example or model for our kids to see as it comes full circle, because while they're doing that work on site, I'll always pull them aside and say, hey, talk a little bit about when you were in construction class, the things that you thought were important, and now that you own your own business, and that helps our kids relate. Like, this is a Schuyler grad. Well, maybe I should do that too. So, and a lot of our kids have a great advantage because they're bilingual, and we hit that all the time. You not only can speak English, but you can speak Spanish, and there's a huge market out there for entrepreneurs in that area.
Okay. I just have to ask, when we were there last year, you gave us a tour of the field house that you had built, but I see that you're sitting in a facility that will be a unique addition to the community. Can you give us just a quick comment or two about the facility that you're sitting in and what you're doing with it?
Oh. Last December, well, the nursing home closed a year ago last March. And it was one of 19 nursing homes in the state of Nebraska that closed. And I was presented with an opportunity to be able to look at purchasing this nursing home in December. And we bought the nursing home for, I think, $24 a square foot. And we right now are we're sitting in a Board of Education room, but it's got 3 wings with about 80 rooms in it. And we turned the southeast wing, the assisted living, into the district offices. We put an alternative ed school in here, an adult ed school. We moved 7 technology offices in here. We moved our dual language principal, and we also run workforce development out of this office. And so they take all of the online applications for Cargill there. And so we're downtown in the Homestead Center. And when they closed that for COVID, then we opened up here and moved our offices back to this building. We also moved our special ed department, physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychologists, special ed administrator over to the southeast wing. And so their offices are over in that end. We're working right now with another group that we're looking at daycare, birth to 3-year-old daycare, early childhood. And then the other 2 wings, we're outgrowing our space in the rural schools for our dual language program. Right now we have single sections of dual language where they learn in Spanish one day, English one day. And so we'll start working once we receive those funds to be able to convert this building into a dual language school. It'll end up being a double track class with about, right now we have 15 kids a class, so we would probably double. We've got space to double for a K-5, so 6 grades of about 30 kids a piece. And that'll end up being our K-5 dual language. So
a great example of a school taking advantage of an opportunity to benefit the community and their kids and create partnerships. So thank you. Just quickly, does somebody have an action item or an aha moment that they want to share with us? Well, Dr. Hazing and Jim, it's been a great day, and we've appreciated you sharing the information that you have with us today. We have your information, I believe, on a previous slide, but would you mind just telling us how people can reach you if they have any further questions for you?
If you have any questions for me, I can answer phone calls or emails or anything that they need. I'll try to assist them in any way. I'm also probably easiest to be reached at my email, jim.cossack@SchuylerCommunitySchools.org.
Okay, and I would guess Sherry is probably putting that in the chat box as you speak. So, okay, perfect. Well, as we look towards wrapping up here, I just want you to stay with us a little bit longer. And if you were with us at the May webinar, Senator Matt Williams joined us and talked about the Rural Workforce Housing Program and funds. And you heard Dr. Hazing reference that too. So we had this event happen in Holdridge last week. We celebrated with some guests the completion of our Rural Workforce Housing Fund project here in Holdridge. It was a great day, and we couldn't have asked for a better time. Governor Ricketts as well as Senator Williams both joined us, and many other community members and the buyers of this home to cut the ceremonial ribbon on this new home here in Holdridge. The project was very successful due to partnerships that SCED has, and we heard Dr. Hazing talking about partnerships as well that got their program going. but the Department of Economic Development and NIFA were a big contributor by providing the rural workforce housing funds. We also had a partnership with Phelps County Development Corporation right here in Holdridge. They actually purchased, and we'll see in a moment, this property and then sold it to us for $1 so that we could put this home on that lot. We also had local partners who helped provide the matching funds: Glenwood Telecommunications, First State Bank here in Holdridge, Bruning Bank here in Holdridge, as well as the Minden Exchange Bank. So you can kind of see the before and the after of what was on that lot. And in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see what the value of these duplexes were. And you're not seeing double. It was 2 separate units, and they were duplexes. They rented the basement as well as the main floor level. So it was a deplorable condition. It should have been demolished years ago, and it wasn't really contributing much to the tax rolls. The assessed value was not even $15,000. So you can see the before and the after, and the new home that sits there now is a beautiful and wonderful addition to the neighborhood. And we're excited, the buyers are excited, and it will just be what we hope to be the first of many completed homes around our region. So if you want to know more about what our rural workforce housing funds can do in your community, feel free to reach out and contact us. So quickly, I just want to touch on our website. If you want to catch up on past webinars as well as today's webinar, that will be available at the website that is mentioned there. A while back we had Cliff Mesner, maybe not just a while back, it's almost 2 years ago now, but Cliff joined us back in August of 2018 and talked about investment clubs and how that can be a local tool for housing solutions. And I think that's probably one of the top revisited webinars that we have on the site. So we check the numbers, and we are pleased to see that many of you are taking advantage of going back and looking at some of those past webinars. So that is a perfect segue to next month's topic that we will be looking at. And I'm truly excited about this one as well. You probably are tired of me saying it, but next month, August 20th, we will have Brian Beaumont. He is the owner of the Ansley Lumber and Supply, as well as one of the core investors in a newly formed investment group in Ansley. If you know me well, you know I'm from the Ansley area. So when I caught wind of this new investment group, I was just bouncing up and down like a 3-year-old, excited to have them come. And it's an interesting story you're going to want to hear. They really formed this investment group out of a series of disappointments that they had in the community and in the county. And so they've decided to take matters in their own hands and formed an investment group. And you can see by the picture, they've got a house underway. So I'm looking forward to having Brian and perhaps somebody else from the investment group join us and share what they're doing. So plug that one into your calendar. I think it will be wonderful. So Dr. Hazing and Jim, I just want to say thank you again for joining us, and you're welcome to join us at any time. We appreciate it so very much. So are there any last comments or questions from our group today? Hearing none. If not, I just thank all of you for joining us again, and wish you the best and have a great rest of your day. Looking forward to seeing you again next month.
Thanks everybody for joining us.